What's up guys? I'm Coach Sean and I'm here to show you how to take your favorite foods and make them just a little bit healthier. Today, we're smoking up a batch of spare ribs and I'm gonna show you everything from how to prep them, how to season them, and even how you can take something like spare ribs and work them into your diet. You're not gonna wanna miss it. This is Coach Sean's Kitchen. I wanted to begin this video by saying thank you. It's starting to feel like this channel is really starting to gain some traction, and it's because of you guys who are tuning in, watching, leaving comments, and liking these videos. So thank you to you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And if you like what I'm doing, please like these videos, and remember, comments are the best thing you can do. So leave a comment anything. If you don't know what to say, just say, I love ribs. That'll work for me. So let's start off with the elephant in the room. How can pork spare ribs be healthy? I've been coaching people on and off for the past 10 years on how to live a healthier life. And every time we talk about diet, I tell them about my system, a hierarchy for teaching someone how to eat a healthier diet. And it looks a lot like this. And you can read more about it on my website. But once you've mastered the foundations, things like you eat a consistent amount of calories every day, you're consuming enough protein, you're getting in your fruits and vegetables, the last thing we start to talk about is what ratio of carbohydrates to fat works best for you, your lifestyle, your environment, and your culture. And there's no right answer. Some people function incredibly well on a high carbohydrate, low fat diet, and some people are completely opposite. They love the high fat, low carb. It's all about finding what works best for you. So how do we take spare ribs and make them just a little bit healthier? Well, we've got a meat that's high in protein, also high in fat, so I think, how can I limit the amount of carbohydrates I'm putting into this meat? And once I have a meal that is high protein and high fat, I make that be the focus of my meal, and I try to avoid adding in additional carbohydrates or sugars to this meal. So let's get down to it. Let's start making some healthy spare ribs. So here, you can see I've got a few racks of spare ribs that I picked up at the grocery store. These guys were just on sale, so you can see they don't even look the same. One of them looks like your traditional spare ribs piece, and the other actually looked like this when I pulled it out of the bag. But in the end, I'm actually gonna pull it all off the bone because that's how I like to have it in my fridge ready for whatever meal I wanna add it to. So I don't really care about how it looks. First step, anytime you're doing a pork rib, is to remove that membrane from the back. I love using a paper towel to help me get a little bit of a grip on it. Once I've got my spare ribs prepped up, I'm gonna start seasoning them. And the first thing I need to do is add a binder. Now you can use anything from olive oil to Worcestershire sauce, but it seems like barbecue legend says you have to use yellow mustard, the cheaper the better. So that's what I'm gonna use here, but whatever you got on hand will work. The first layer of flavor we're gonna add is that Kinder's Buttery Steakhouse rub. This rub has quickly become one of my favorites. It's organic, it's very simple ingredients, and it adds an incredibly savory base to build upon with your additional layers of flavor. Now the second rub I'm gonna put on the outside is Halo and Cleaver's Basting rub. And this rub is sugar-free, but it's incredibly sweet. They use a bee pollen extract to create a little bit of sweetness in the ribs without adding any sugar to it. I highly recommend both of these products. I'll put the link in the description below. Once I've got my ribs seasoned up, all sides, I'm gonna let them hang out on my counter for about 15 minutes or however long it takes for me to fire up my Traeger grill. So we are outside at my Traeger. You can see it's a beautiful sunny March day. One of those beautiful gems where it gets a little bit too warm for winter, but ain't nobody complaining about that. So I've got my Traeger grill rolling at 250 degrees and it's full of Hickory Pellets. Now, as far as putting the ribs on the smoker, I'm not gonna overcomplicate it. I'm just gonna lay them down, making sure they look nice and that they've got even airflow around the outside. Then I'm shutting up my lid and I ain't gonna open it for a good hour and a half. After an hour and a half, I went out there to do my first check, and you can see these ribs are starting to look real good. That color is starting to form and the outside is starting to dry out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do two things now that my Traeger is open. I'm gonna rearrange the ribs just to ensure that I get even cooking across all of the racks. And the second thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spritz the outside to keep them moist. Now you can use anything, heck, you can use water to spritz the outside of your ribs, but since I had an open carton of chicken broth asking to be used, I decided to use that, along with a little bit of apple cider vinegar and some olive oil. I'll put the exact amounts in the description below. Now what I'm gonna do is shut my Traeger and I'm gonna continue this pattern every hour for about 4.5 hours of total cook time. Now we're ready to start checking our ribs for doneness. And there's a whole list of things that I'm looking for that tells me that I've cooked a good rack of ribs. You can see the pullback on the bones where the meat's starting to shrink from the ends. They're temping at about 200 degrees between the bones, and that thermometer is being inserted in and out with ease. And I should be able to pick up the ribs and move them around without them breaking. If they're breaking as you're moving them around, you've probably overcooked your ribs and you've probably got some pretty dry meat. So these guys were looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this smaller rack, and I'm gonna let this larger one continue to cook just a little bit longer. So now that we're inside, I've let these guys rest for about 20 minutes. It's time to start carving. Always, always, always flip your ribs over and use a serrated knife to cut between the bones. And as you can see, we did a damn good job cooking these ribs. We've got a beautiful smoke ring around the outside, and you can see that we've got plenty of juice still on the inside, an incredibly tender and succulent rib. And the taste of these guys, freaking out of this world. Once you learn how to cook a good rib without adding a ton of sugar, you're gonna A, feel better eating them, and B, it's hard to go back. Finally, I wanna show you how I break down one of these ribs, because this is actually how I store it in the fridge so that I can quickly use it in meal prep or just cooking at home. So don't laugh at me for my simple camera setup here. The lights are put away. I just put up one camera just to time lapse it and show you what I'm doing here. But I'm just ripping the meat from the bone, and anytime I'm cooking spare ribs, this is a great way to do it because it has tons of cartilage on the inside, tons of tendons and bones. I can be sure I get all of that out. I can run it over with my knife, and then I've got the equivalent to pulled pork, but it's all ribs, which I like a little bit more because that ratio of bark to meat is just a little bit higher, and that's how I like my pork. Let me know in the comments how you think I did, what you guys wanna see next, or remember, just say, I love ribs. I wanna thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Coach Sean's Kitchen, and as always, you can make anything homemade and healthy.